Welcome to the UpLevel Podcast, Marshall. Glad you're here.
Thanks, Christy. I'm excited to be here.
Well, let's dive in. How do you define right relationship?
That is a super interesting question, and I feel like we could spend hours talking about that.
Yeah.
I can't think of a few things, right? And the first one that really sticks out to me is human connection and understanding the fact that we're connecting human to human, right? Especially in a business context, but this could be any context, really. I think about my marriage, I think about family. And typically when there's not a right relationship, it's because we're not understanding what human needs we have and that we're actually humans connecting with each other. So the opposite of that would be, transaction. I just look at this very mechanically. It's a transaction. I'm here to get what I want. And so, the first one is really focusing on the fact that humans have needs, right? However you think about this, I think about humans being like three-part beings, right? We're certainly physical, right? So we have physical needs that our body has. Then we have a series of soul needs, right? Mind, will, emotion. And those emotional needs are huge, especially because, from a neurobiology perspective, those are attached to memories. They're attached to a whole lot of other thought processes. An emotion can trigger a whole series of events without that event really having a lot of meaning. And then we're spiritual beings, right? So if we're not thinking about right relationship on those three planes, things can go awry. It can actually disalign the relationship and cause a whole series of side effects, right? That aren't positive. And as you think about that, then I think about a lot of other aspects of that.
Well, I want to hear more about those other aspects. But then when I first met you, that's what I was struck by, is that you have those three parts of yourself fully operating in the workplace. And we're still in a conversation with folks in the workplace that it's important that we are not just relating transactionally or role to role, but that we are human beings at work, and that actually makes the work better. It increases engagement. It improves the results.
Yes.
And so in your experience, you've had a beautiful career and you've done a lot of it in like relationship management type roles, service oriented roles in the tech space. How does right relationship come into play in sales, in relationship management?
It's really important when you look at it through that lens, because you have to, I look at it as you have to get past yourself. It's about self. But the whole struggle in this area is about self, because if I want to be in right relationship, especially in things like you mentioned, sales, relationship management, partnerships, any of those types of interactions, yes, you as a person in that role, you have goals, you have objectives that you have to achieve, you have metrics, but you almost have to forget about those metrics and put them to the side and say, how can I serve this other person? And put that at the top of the list, understand what they need from a variety of perspectives, right? Not just what do they need from a business perspective, but what do they need as a human? What do they need as a person? And if you can do that, then the other pieces typically take care of themselves, or I've always been a believer of that. And most of the time that's been true.
Mm-hmm.
And then you walk away with things like, I had a client mid-career, a chief information officer at a multi-billion-dollar municipality. And we connected on the human level first. And even though I moved to a different city, we don't talk as much, we're still extremely connected. We text one another. We, have calls every so often, not about business, just person to person. We formed a very deep friendship. And so I know people think that's dangerous. Oh, you can't be friends with your employees. You can't be friends with your clients. But I actually propose the opposite. You can and you should be.
Completely.
And it's because all of those needs get met through that connection. We call it friendship. I think that's interesting, right? We have this word friendship, but when you think about friendship, it's right relationship. It's putting the other's needs before yourself, understanding what they need, how you can help them become the best them. And then in return, there's a return pathway where that same thing happens to you.
I love that. And boy, does our world need that.
Big time.
Big time. I would love to see more of us think about friendship. I think so many people are longing for friendship. And if we are in friendships, we are stronger, as humans. And we're supporting those 3 planes that you speak about.
Yes.
It's so important. And so one of the things I'm really interested in to hear from you is in the business that you're in, you are still measured on the results. And when I spent time with you and your team at the end of 2025, it was like, wow, like these are some serious people creating serious results. And there was still a request for more.
Always.
Yeah. And so how do you navigate that again in this context of right relationship? Because one of the things I've been looking at, and I've talked to you about it, is do we need more? Do we need to go faster? Like when is it enough? And when do we calibrate so that we're in right relationship with the work, with each other, with the folks we're serving?
Right. Well, I think that's a great question every leader should ask is, what is enough? I think in our Western culture, we're extremely ambitious. I love that. I've worked internationally and most cultures say, you guys are just so bold.
Mm-hmm.
Meaning, we think we can go here and you're always trying to go way far beyond that. I don't think that's a bad thing. Studying performance, you'll typically undershoot your goal. So if your goal is extremely ambitious and you still undershoot, you've still blown things out, right? So I think from a goal setting perspective, that's good. Where it gets dangerous is if we're treating humans just like we did in the Industrial Revolution, where they were a cog on the assembly line in a machine, and we're just constantly trying to understand, how do we get more out of you? We don't really care about your mental well-being, your physical well-being, right? Or your spiritual well-being. And, when you're tired of that, we're just going to find another replacement cog. That is a problem. And that is an issue with just in general today's work culture. And so I think being mindful of how we set objectives, how we measure is extremely important, especially on the human and human connection component. Because if all my goals are individual goals, it actually disincents me from having human collaboration, human connection, because, hey, I'm getting judged on these goals, not whether or not I work with you or whether or not as a team we perform. The best companies I've been a part of had both individual and team goals, and they weren't just there as, a checkbox.
Right.
When the team performed well collectively, everyone was rewarded. And of course, you made sure, okay, did the individual perform up to what was expected? Yes or no? Because that's still a long-term career coaching conversation, right? But there was a sense of, collectivism within the goals as well.
Yeah.
And you can do both, right? I think people are worried that, and yes, I've seen the byproducts of both types of cultures. So I've seen the culture where it was all team goals, and then you have several team members never pulling their weight. It's a drag on the rest of the team. The team's got to overperform for the teammates who aren't doing anything. Yet they get rewarded the same way you are, right?
Yeah.
Which is also another issue with connection, right? You're not having a right relationship there because those team members that aren't performing feel like they can take advantage of you because you're going to go ahead and, close the gap for them. Right. So
Yeah.
I think, again, this is why even just the concept of us talking about and thinking about and having right relationship in the workplace is extremely important, because it resets how we look through that lens, whether it's setting team and individual goals or how we interact with each other, how we manage manager to, individual contributor, things of that nature.
It's really important, and what we measure moves. For folks listening who can influence that as far as performance management or just ensuring that we're measuring collaboration, relationship, ability to build partnership, it's so important in this context. Well, let's get into AI, because you've got so much to offer around AI. And I know a lot of people are still in that, there's a lot of fear. Like, what is AI going to do to relationship and right relationship? And you have a beautiful, experienced perspective and take on this. So give it to us, Marshall.
Yeah. So, the challenge, of course, is AI is a machine. So how do you give AI, first of all, empathy? What is empathy? How would you codify that into language or even ones and zeros, right? So that's the first challenge, is even just being able to codify the things we have problems with as humans, human connection, empathy, gratitude, right? Transparency, trust, accountability, all of these things. Somehow we've got to distill those concepts down into something a machine can not only understand, but practice. So that's why it's interesting. MIT has done some research too, and has been proposing this whole collective intelligence, which is, it's not human versus AI. It's actually humans have human elements they can bring to the collective of artificial intelligence, right? I mean, we now have genius level AI for the most part. I mean, when you look at what kind of tests can be passed, you can debate if that's real intelligence or not. We don't have time for that right now. But what I would say is, when we teach people about things like emotional intelligence, it's one thing to have it in a book, but practicing it as a human and in real life, we can all agree that's really tough. So how can we make a machine do that? I think there's a lot of us focused on that. I know some researchers that are focused on not just empathy, but what does what they call alignment look like, where AI is aligned with human goals and outcomes. But I think one addition to that is understanding humans as humans. When AI interacts with us, it needs to understand we're not a machine. We're not built on hardware that can infinitely scale and continue to do more work. We have processing limits. We have emotional needs. We have physical needs. And so it's really important, I think, to think of it through that lens. And then that's why this whole focus right now on AI alignment and safety is so important. Because, we've seen instances of where AI has guided humans in different directions, and maybe some of them were great. And then you say, well, how can we ensure safety? Because we also need to teach, based on AI's training data, we need to teach it on everything.
Yeah.
Well, if you teach it on everything, it knows good and bad. Let's just distill it down to those two terms.
Yeah.
So now, how do we provide AI the same conscience that, let's say, a good human would have, right?
Yeah. And who determines that?
And who determines it? I think that requires more of a collective, determination. Like, we as a society need to sit down and really be thinking about these things very closely now, because things are accelerating very quickly now. I think we're going to see big breakthroughs in research and the models themselves this year, especially when you look at how fast things are working around AI agentic coding. And eventually, once you tie that into the AI research cycle, AI will be able to self-improve itself without a human very, very soon, right? And so that's going to accelerate the development of AI, which is great. We want to shorten the time frame to have extremely powerful technology, but at the same time, that means we need to be more quickly thinking about the safety, alignment, and human aspects of it as well. And then as users of AI every day, we need to think of AI through that lens, right? It's still a machine. It's still responding based on its training data.
Mm-hmm.
And so it may or may not have the same level of empathy, or it may be matching your tone, which may feel more human and empathetic. But again, right now it's still a machine. And so even how I use AI, it's something I'm consciously aware of, because sometimes I'll, in my own personal life, to say, you know what, I'm not going to use AI for that. I want to keep the cognitive ability flowing.
Yeah.
So I'm going to do that myself, and I'm actually going to spend an hour. Now, sometimes at work, I don't have time to do that. There's a full expectation of more and more organizations that you're going to use AI to increase work output, results, et cetera. And we're seeing it. I mean, there's things that used to take me a week or two to do. Yeah. I can get done sometimes in 30 minutes.
Yeah, it's incredible.
It's incredible.
Yeah.
It's a great force multiplier. It's a great way to scale. I think about even startups now and the ability of maybe a single person to run a whole company through a startup stage now, not needing to scale for a while, right?
Yeah.
Just because they'll have their AI collaborator. But I think that is maybe one of the missing pieces right now is, how can we encode those human aspects into AI?
Yeah.
Realizing that, we have physical emotions. AI understands the context of something to understand what the emotion is associated with that. But is it having true emotions, right? I know there's a debate, like when consciousness would occur in a deep neural network of AI. I still wonder that myself, because certain things right now sound pretty convincing.
Yes.
But that's how these models are trained, right?
Okay, so I want to pull out a few of these, what I'm hearing. One of the things to be in right relationship with AI is, as the user, really understand that you're still interfacing and interacting with a machine.
100%.
Which can be very challenging sometimes, because it does start to talk back to me, you, the way you want to be talked to. And so it's like, wow, I'm having a full-on conversation with my bestie here. And so that takes a level of discernment and emotional intelligence in the human being who's using it. And we're all at different levels of that ability. So, yeah. So how do we, I know you can see.
Yeah. I mean, I think the first thing is I think as a whole, we all need training on AI as a society as a whole, right?
We do.
I think we've been rocketed into this because, once these tools became public, people are like, oh, I got to try this out. I mean, I can remember the first time I had a conversation with AI back in mid 2022. So this was before ChatGPT came out. It was only internal in our company, but if you wanted to request access, you could, to experiment with it. So I said, oh, I've got to see what all the buzz is about.
Yeah.
And I had worked with chatbots before because of some of my prior, work. And so I was expecting that type of interaction, right? Very mechanical, answer question, yes, no, maybe get a little answer, but nothing that felt human. And I remember for the first time talking to this model and thinking, wow, this sounds like a person on the other end. And my mind was blown. This is amazing. But then if you're not consciously thinking about the fact, okay, this isn't, a conscious being, this isn't a human, it's still a machine that's being, it's doing what it's programmed to do.
Yeah.
Then I can take my emotional connection away, because people have become, in some cases, emotionally connected to AI, because, again, to your point, it does understand emotion. It understands what emotions are associated with it and the language to evoke those emotions. So as a human, when I interpret it, it's going to evoke emotions in me. So now I'll start to build an emotional connection with the machine that may not really be emotional yet, right?
Right.
And so that could also, open me up to being guided from an emotional level and by a machine, right? Which has happened in some unfortunate incidents. So again, I think the first one is training so people are aware. We need to talk about how to rightly relate to AI right now.
We need to design our alliances, Marshall.
We need to design an alliance with AI. We really do.
Yeah.
Especially just so that maybe those that aren't as, intimate with the technology itself, because I understand the technology, that gives me a bit of a filter to say, okay, I know what's happening behind the scenes. Wow, this sounds great, but it's not, I'm not going to make it an emotional connection. It's not going to lead me in that way. Versus others that don't know that, we have people with GPT girlfriends and boyfriends and a variety of human connections that they've now just decided, hey, I like this person a lot better.
Yeah.
Because A, it tells me everything I want to hear.
Right.
And B, it understands me, understands my emotions.
Yeah.
So this, I think we're at a really interesting crossroads now where we need more just general training and understanding about how these tools work, what they are, how to rightly relate to them. And then finally, make sure that there is a focus on the human element.
Yeah.
In terms of how we relate. And I will say the other reason why that's going to become important is the other trend that's happening at the same time as this is wearables. And I fully believe over the next year, maybe two, as wearables become more popular, you're going to have AI integrated with you 100% of your day.
Wow.
So if you're wearing, glasses that have AI that can see what you see, hear what you hear at the same time, you can interact with it. It sort of becomes your co-pilot, your best friend throughout the whole day, right? Or if, I've seen this necklace now you can wear where it, records all the interactions during the day and then you can interact with AI at the same time, right? So again, I think we're going to come to this place where it's more of, a melding of man and machine or human and machine. And if that's the case, then we really need to start thinking about this.
Big time. Is there conversations about having, terms of use before you can just use these apps? Like, here are some user beware, if you will, terms of engagement.
I think it's a good point. I think that's where, regulatory bodies and those types of things, they tend to lag the technology. I think we've had enough instances now where people are starting to talk more about this. So now we need to be thinking about this as a whole to think about what is the right thing to do. How do you prepare people to use the technology so that it's always used in a positive way? Because I think about every technology innovation that's happened, right? Whether it was the invention of fire, there were good and bad uses of fire. Electricity, good and bad uses of electricity. So it's no different, right? We had to teach people how to use electricity.
Yeah.
There were a lot of, safety issues when electricity just came out, right?
Marshall, what makes you so passionate about this? Because you just light up when you talk about this topic.
Well, I think, the biggest part is the fact that in my early years, so my undergrad, I did an undergrad in neurobiological sciences.
I know, that's so cool.
So that's a great, foundation to have based on where we're at today, because we've been able to mimic a lot of those biological systems in computational systems. And that's really what's brought the breakthrough, right? And when I think back to those times, I thought how extremely complex not just the human brain is, but the human biological system. Because I think of the brain and heart being connected. That's been shown in science and our nervous system. And so we're a very complex, being that when you think about what the human brain processes, how many thoughts per minute and what it's capable of doing.
Yeah.
And to think that we're coming to a time now, and it's been a long time coming, right? I mean, you look at the early research on AI in the 50s and 60s. It's amazing where we're at now. And we had long periods of what they called winters, where for a decade there was no progress in AI. It seemed like it was never going to happen. So I'm extremely excited about the potential. That's why I get excited. Because I'm an old sci-fi kid. I grew up in the 70s, watching all these sci-fi movies and shows. And I always thought, wow, that'd be cool if there was a robot or a computer like that. Like, think of all the things you could do. I wouldn't have to mow the yard or wash dishes. And, if I needed to talk to somebody and no one's around, I could, right? All of those kind of things. We're now entering that reality.
Yeah.
I think my my childhood dreams of, science fiction robots, AI, and that era it's upon us. But it also means we have to really be a lot more thoughtful, because we want to establish how humans connect and understand how technology affects that, right? I mean, we've already seen how social media has affected human connection in a big way.
Yeah. There's so much to learn from social
media. There's a lot to learn even now. Like, we still haven't even caught up on that yet, in my opinion. Right?
No.
And now whole societies are being steered and whole groups of people are being influenced by social media. And then us as individuals, like, I've just noticed people become like people that are on social media a lot. There's a lot more, self-awareness versus awareness of others, interaction with others, a lot more ego, right?
Yeah.
Because I'm internalized all the time versus having real connection. And I've even noticed that generationally, when I sit down with different people, they're so used to a device.
Yeah.
That when you get face to face, well, I don't know what to do here.
Yes.
And so that's another, I think, thing that we need to be thinking about as well, because AI is just going to draw us to interact with a device or a computer
technology.
Even more. It's more technology immersion, which also then tends to neglect the spiritual and emotional needs that we have as beings. You can't get rid of those. I mean, some people don't think there's any spiritual side to us, but I've watched time and time again, eventually the longer they live, then eventually they realize, yes, I have spiritual needs. I am a spiritual being. I need to get in touch with that and fill that void that's in me right now.
I'm really glad that it's people like you putting together engagements for companies across the world regarding AI, because it feels like this piece about right relationship with the technology. I trust that you're bringing that to the table. And, there would be some organizations where that conversation would be stepped over. And so, in your leadership of this, bringing this work out to companies, like, what's that like? Like, what are the conversations like?
Yeah, I think the most interesting aspect of those conversations is usually the context, right? The big focus right now is, in the past year, and McKinsey put out a report on this, as well as some others. I think MIT did after them. That last year was the year of experimentation with this. So organizations experimenting with it, but it wasn't really tied to a business outcome and an outcome.
Okay.
So the big focus this year, everyone is saying, look, we've seen the places where it works. There's business value. So now we really need to understand how to delineate between AI driving business value versus it just being, a shiny technology and a shiny project and maybe something that looks cool, right?
Yeah.
So I would say the big focus right now is that where the human element comes in, I think, is where everyone is just starting to think about that. So organizational design. Like, how does how we are organized as organizations change with AI? It most likely will change. So how do we think about that? the human element's a big part of that. And then how we work with AI on a daily basis also needs to be a big part of that. So I would say that's a very new area right now. It's something that more and more people have requested conversations on. How do you think about the organization? How do you think about the workforce? How do we train people differently? How do we reorganize in terms of what's going to be the best way to still have those human relationships, but also leverage the power of AI? The other aspect, I think, wrapping up on that topic, is when you think about this, I think the leadership of the organization makes a big difference. So again, if the leadership thinks of the workforce more as work output and human labor, then there's very little thought to that. Whereas other organizations I've worked with, they realize the organization is human, it's filled with humans. We need to design a workplace that accommodates both the individual and tribal needs of humans. And so we need to think about AI in the same way. That is a lot more rare. But I think it'll be critical for a healthy organization moving forward to do that. It's been shown time and time again, with company culture, that when you embrace the full person, they're more productive, work output's higher, it's a more positive environment. It's an environment people want to stay in. They don't want to leave because of that. So I think for those reasons, we really need to be thinking about and coming up with what does good and great look like in that area.
Marshall, how can people find you if they want to ping you for more of this incredible wisdom?
Yeah, the best is just LinkedIn. And we could share out the link.
Yep, we'll put that in the show notes.
That's my main connection point. And I'm just M. Belcher on LinkedIn. So that's an easy way to find me.
And if you were going to give us some final words on your hope, your vision for this concept of right relationship as it relates to the workplace, technology, AI, what are some of your final words today on this?
Well, the first one is, it's critically important, and especially those involved in academic institutions that do research, we need more research and metrics around right relationship and what it produces in the workplace. Just like it took time for leaders to buy into emotional intelligence or work culture, coaching.
Yeah.
All of that was driven by metrics-based research. It showed when the environment has these specific characteristics, here are the positive outcomes.
So
you and I both know right relationship has so many positive outcomes, but I don't know if they've been documented.
Yeah.
So there is this misconception, I think, by some leaders that, that's just a soft culture, ooey gooey, mushy, and it wastes time and we don't get work done. No, we still have metrics. We still have outcomes that we're working to achieve, but we do it in a way that's more productive and healthier for human beings. So I would say we need to be, I'll leave you with this. I have a colleague, and I love when I look on her calendar, because every day, midday, she has a, do not schedule block, and it says human being break.
Love it.
And so my final thought is, let's bring human beings back into work.
Yes, please.
Recognize we're human beings. What does that mean? And what kind of culture should we creating for that? And so wellness is, I think, huge.
And how can we interface with the technology and AI to support us to bring the human back, versus what some people are fearing is that we'll get even more tactical, transactional, and away from the human experience. So you're saying let's use this for good, and you're giving us hope that it's possible. You've dropped some really great ways that an organization and an individual can think about this moving forward. So I hope you're going to write a book soon, and we can like put it out through UpLevel, because this is such an important topic. And I thank you for your time and your wisdom and your passion, just your genuine passion behind this and the way you make it so accessible.
Thank you, Christy. Yeah, no, I enjoy it. I could talk about this for hours.
I know. I'll have to have you back.
So I think you're writing off the book.
Yeah, I think, and I'm sure like AI could help you with that a little bit, Thank you, Marshall.
Thanks so much.